Hello, this is Gail with Beaded Jewelry Diva. Today's project is going to be this bracelet. It is a stretch bracelet and it uses 2-hole beads. I will show you how to go ahead and make this bracelet. I'll tell you where I got the materials. And if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. And let's get started to find out how to make this bracelet. Let's go ahead and talk about the supplies that you're going to need. I have a selection of 2-hole beads, so these have 2 holes on each side. So I got a bunch of these from Joann. They were having a sale, so I figured out what the heck, it would be kind of neat. Just as an FYI, you can see that there are some clear like seed beads that are separating each one of these beads. I'm not going to use them in my finished bracelet, but go ahead and keep these because they're useful for things like if you need something with size 6 seed beads in it. So just wanted to throw that out there. So size 8 seed beads, some 4mm squares, Tool Magic. This one is kind of a sparkly color. That's something different. I've never tried this one. 1mm. I wanted to get a 1mm size because I wanted this to be a little bit more robust. I have some of the little bead stoppers that help keep your beads from falling off, a pair of scissors, and something different. I am going to repurpose a bunch of necklaces that I bought. I got them on eBay. I'll tell you a little bit more about them later, but I'm going to grab some beads from this and incorporate it in this. Ready? Let's go ahead and see what it takes to make this bracelet. Alright, I have everything kind of laid out. I've got my big beads the way that I want to go ahead and use them on the bracelet. And I've got the rest of the beads just kind of spread out over here. You may be wondering why I wanted to use repurposed pearl-like beads or something like that. The reason being is stretch bracelets, by their very nature, are not as sturdy as something made with, for example, the beading wire. So I am putting things on here that if I had to lose them, I wouldn't break my heart. Just saying. Anyway, I've got these laid out the way I want them. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip them over, each one of them. And the reason that I'm going to flip them over is I really need to pay attention to how the holes are running. So you can see that these are running this way. I want to turn them so they run across. And I'm going to kind of check each one of them to make sure that they are in the proper orientation. So that's more like it. There we go. So I've got them in a proper orientation. I'm going to grab some of my Stretch Magic and I'm going to use probably a whole lot more than I really need to. And I figure I would rather use too much rather than not have enough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put this wonderful little tool bead stopper thingy, if I can get it to work, put this on so my beads aren't going to drop off this end. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and obviously string these beads, but between these beads, if I just did them all together, they'd kind of mush up just a little bit, and they wouldn't be as flexible for a bracelet. So between them, I'm going to put various other beads. To get started, I am going to go for, let's see, I'll just start with this one. So I've got the bead in the way that I want to see it because I can see my holes are going this way. I'm going to put or string my stretch beading wire or stretch beading string, whatever you want to call it, through here. Now sometimes it'll take a little bit to get the beading string through it, but here you go. You see that it's up here like that. Now the reason I also have these all in the same orientation is because I want to make sure that when I string them on and I let them go like this, they're all going to face the same way. In other words, I won't have some that are flipped up, some that are flipped down or whatever. So I'm going to do this. Now I've got this bead on. I'm going to, let's see, usually by the beads I want to go ahead and have some smaller beads so that they will go ahead and kind of snug up to it. And then I may, well, here's just another size 8. I'll put that on. Then maybe I want one of these bigger cubes, 4mm cubes. So I take a look and I figure out, okay, how much space do I need between the beads to go also to fit my wrist? Because one of the things that you also have to think about with this is you need to know what's going to comfortably fit around your wrist. For me, it's a whole bunch of beads. For you, it may only be just a few of these beads, or maybe you only want one big stretch bead. It's up to you. But for me, I think probably about this much is going to be good for me. So I'm going to go ahead and in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and string on another one of the clears and then another one of those silvery gray type ones. So here's a clear and I think here's a silvery gray one. All right, I've got one. So I've got this on. Now I want to go ahead and pick up the next one in my line, which happens to be this one. I want to make sure the orientation is correct. Let's see. So here to here. And I string these down. And I see that this is what I've got between the two. Now my question then becomes, do I like that? Is that too much, too little? What do I want to see? Right now, and I'll tell you, this bracelet can be a little trial and error because you've got to figure out what it is you like and what is it that you want to see. So far, okay, so I'm going to, whoopsie daisy, pick myself up, I think, another one of the clear one, or the gray ones. And this time I'm going to pick up one of these repurposed beads. And by the way, when you do these repurposed beads, you also want to make sure that the hole size will match whatever beading thread or stretch thread cord that you're using. Okay, so I've got one of the size 8s, then I've got this pearly type thingy, and then another size 8. So that's what I have for this one. Pick up the next one in line. Now fortunately, these particular 2-hole beads that I'm using don't have a specific orientation as far as up or down. They're just all circular. But if your beads that you pick have a specific orientation, you need to go ahead and take that into consideration when you're doing your layout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to string on a bunch more of the beads, and then I'm going to stop and come back to you when I'm ready to start the second row. Alright, I have a bunch of them all strung out, and what I did is I put on the little bead clips on either end of it, and then I went ahead and did a test around my wrist and found that I have definitely one bead too many on this. So what do I have to do? I have to go ahead and take off at least one bead and then go ahead and see where I want to put my design from there. But just as an FYI, when you get these, there may be times when you have to do some reconfiguring on the fly, so to speak. So here's my reconfigured bracelet. So you can see I took this particular bead off, and I'm fairly happy with the way this fits. By the time that I put the extra bead in between these two, it's going to work out just about perfectly for my particular wrist. As a reminder, your wrist may vary a great deal. That's why you have to go ahead and do these tests. So let me go ahead and put on the extra beads between these two, and then I'm going to tie up. Well, actually, I'm not going to tie up yet. Alright, I've got my extra beads along the end, and I've got another piece of the stretch cord. And while these are still on this cord, I'm not going to tie them yet because that'll make it even more difficult to do the second string. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece and just put it on this little cord, just so that they're both on. Now they're not going to be in the same hole, so to speak. They're going to be in different ones, but I just want them both anchored. So let me flip this, and you can see that there we go. I've got them anchored. Now what I need to do is I need to go ahead and string on beads, and then string through these, string on beads, string through these, etc., in order to go ahead and get to the point where we need to finish this off. To do that, I have to also decide, do I want to have the exact same bead sequence on this string as I do on this string, or do I want it to be more random? Up to you. You'll see whatever I decide as soon as I'm done with this. So let me go ahead and start stringing and show you where I'm at. If you're not going to make it symmetric, in other words, you're not going to make the top and bottom be the same, here's something that you need to watch out for. You see, when I put these up close together, this one kind of appears to bubble. And if I make this one kind of straight out, I've got cord in between. So you have to make sure that whatever is on the top and bottom are roughly the same length. So if I want to use this configuration, I need to go ahead and put some extra beads on the blue side. Okay, so do you see what I mean by I wanted these more even? You can see that roughly the top of this bead is about the same height as this bead. And you can see I did a little reconfiguration, and sometimes I had to get a little more interesting, like this one. If I put another seed bead right here, it would have been too big for this one, so I skipped a seed bead here. So you can see that I just went ahead and did all sorts of different stuff. Now comes the time to put this together. Alright, I have taken two of the ends off the little bead clips, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tie it together. Let's see, to make sure that I've got it about where I want it. Now ultimately what I'd like to do is to have the knot in back of this big bead, but for right now let's just do a guesstimate knot. So I'm just going to tie a square knot in here. So that looks about the way I want it to, and as you can see, this particular version of the stretch thread is giving me problems. It's coming undone way too easily for my liking. Okay, I figured out what had to happen. When in doubt, I guess go back and read the directions. So what I've had to do is I've had to tie several square knots. So this kind of puts a crimp in my plans, and I thought I'd go ahead and instead of restringing it and everything like that on something else, I thought I'd try to tell you how to get over something like this. So in other words, I'm keeping it very real. Okay, so what I then thought is like, well, maybe I can string like this thread in through this hole and then tie the knot here. Well, guess what? The thread's too big for two of them to go through this hole. Okay, that means I'm just going to go ahead and have to tie two knots here. Another thing that I could do is to go ahead and undo this. So I only had one knot going here. Unthread this. Put this thread through the bead. And the reason that I'm doing this, and doing it on camera is so much more difficult than doing it off camera. The reason I'm doing this is then I don't have two knots ending at the same place, so now I have a knot on this side. So I right over left, then left over right, and then rinse and repeat. So very tight. So again, the reason I did it this way is otherwise I would have had two knots at the same location. I would have had one on this side and one on this side. And instead, I have one here and one here. So that's one way around this one. Now this, I have to tie a bunch tighter because you can see how big the knot is here compared to this one's kind of hidden under here. So I'll have to play with this for just a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do before I do too much more playing is I need to put some glue on these knots. To say that I don't trust them is probably making it an understatement, unless I put in like a third set of square knots. Then I think that this would be pretty stable. Okay, I went back and read the instructions once again, just to make sure, for this particular Stretch Magic cord, just to make sure that the glue that I choose is not going to harm this. Now, when I went back to look, and it didn't say anything about do not use super glue, so I am going to use super new glue. And this is what I'm going to put on my little knots. So, let's see. Got a knot here. Just going to put a bubble on it. Knot here. Put another drop on it. I think I'm going to put an additional one over here. So that's my super glue. I'm going to leave it for about 2 or 3 minutes. It's supposed to dry, you know, within 15 seconds or so. But I figure, well, when it comes to stuff like this, maybe I ought to give it just a little bit longer. So let me go ahead and do that. I will cut the cords and then come back with the finished product. Here we go, finished bracelet. I've cut the cords, I've let it sit, and then I cut the cords. And I think this is a very pretty bracelet. I've tried it on, it fits, yay. You're never quite sure, you know, but especially when it comes to something that is two-hole that's rather large, sometimes it's easy to misjudge how tight it's going to be on your wrist. So I do suggest that you kind of try it on, use those little bead clips and everything, try it on before you tie the ends and cut the cords. Otherwise, you're going to get to restring the whole thing. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't already subscribe to my YouTube channel, I hope that you'll do so you'd never miss another video. And this is Gail signing out for now, saying have yourself a beautiful day. Bye.